Give yourself the last music and the universe will send people who match it.
Yeah, this is an encouragement for me to just the new spiritual pull. I haven't sung in 30 years. And a very famous singer who's passed away is coming through all the time. All I do is hear them sing. All right, I'm going to sing. And I go, oh no, I got to do that. Get the museum going, teach people dowsing, do vibrational work, be a medium, blah, 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 blah. My health is getting better at 65. I'm just getting started.
But you're just...
But, let me do this, please. But, she's resisting.
We have a but before your butt. And our butt trumps your butt. Just soften the arguing for limitations. That's what we hear from humans all the time.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Just wanted to get that in there.
I don't
Oh,
know.
good. We distracted you and broke the momentum of where you were going. That's a good technique.
Yeah, well, that's a major pattern for all of us. And I just caught myself in this small moment that even still, as we expand in that God source energy, there's still in the physical, because of contrast, this arguing for limitations. It's kind of silly.
But let's talk about what that is.
But yeah, there's something about that we have to nail down here that I think
well,
will be...
we are about to nail it down together, and you're going to like it too. It's this continuity that we were talking about we're speaking from the physical human perspective, where I've come from and what I've come to believe and the rightness that I've come to accept that I have, and sort of clinging to that rightness even at the expense of not being able to move forward. What if I believe things that don't let me move forward? What if I'm absolutely right about things that won't let me move forward? Because they were right then, the question is, are they still right? We have an example for you, because you brought Esther into the equation about bumping up against something. So something that happened right before this trip that was really one of those examples is out on the property where the Abraham Hicks Publications is, and the house that Jerry and Esther built is, and so forth. There is a house that Esther has moved out of, and she's moved closer to the airport. So the house is being retrofitted in Esther's mind for other important things. It's still in the vortexual state, but it's big and wonderful for her. And around that house are several magnificent, very, very old, hundreds or more year old oak trees. And there's one that sits right in front of the house that Jerry and Esther and their contractor literally built the house around. Garage could have been much bigger if not for that tree. The living room could have been much bigger if not for that tree. The house wraps around that tree. That tree really matters to Esther. So she hired a new guy, really wonderful person who's accomplishing really a lot. And she got a text from someone else that was on the property. Esther, have you okayed that? And Esther looked, and they were in the process of trimming 2 very large limbs from that tree. And by the time Esther got out there, they were down. The big limbs were down. And Esther sat in the driveway and wept because, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You would do something that drastic to something that I care so much about with no conversation with me. Now, so don't mourn for Esther. She will recover. But here's what this is all about. So, first of all, Esther doesn't live in that house and look at that tree every day. That's different. Next, one of those branches was completely blocking the entrance to that house, and Esther didn't care because she never came in that entrance. But in the new vision, that entrance is going to matter. Oh. So Esther's clinging to beliefs that she established with Jerry. Jerry's beliefs matter so much to Esther, even though his beliefs from his non-physical perspective are liberated. So Esther is clinging and defending to a rightness that is no longer active or vivid or necessary, and not giving way to what's coming next.
So it doesn't apply.
Doesn't apply, but it feels like it should apply because it has been applying. They would be on the road while the house was still in the dream state. They'd come home and Jerry and Mike, the contractor, would stake the house out again. The house was drawn to fit in between the trees, and then they were trying to figure out if it really would fit. So they'd stake it out and they'd put big poles and they'd draw ribbons. They were trying to envision the house. How many of these trees need to be trimmed or removed in order to get this house in here? And it was really a fun process. And then Jerry and Esther would go away for a while and they'd come back and the stakes were down and the foundation still hadn't been poured yet. And so they'd do it all over again. So the planning of that house was so vivid in Esther's mind, and the plotting it among those trees, that was the strongest vibration from past.
And that was all right then.
It was perfect then. But what was right then may not be right now, because in the evolution of things, old gives way to new all the time, unless you're clinging to the old and not willing to give way to the new. Wow.
How did Esther make that switch? What came up for her?
She hasn't. We're just telling you now.
Jerry's changed his mind about it.
She may listen to this recording and hear what we're saying. And she can feel the lightness of it, but she left it by saying to that man, now I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I might come home and find my hanger empty because you think I don't need those things that are in there.
You just got to move to Asheville. Or not. That's a wonderful, small, and universally powerful example.
Huh.
Yeah, that was really Smurfy cool.
What was important, and some of what was still is important, but much of what was is no longer important. But because you were right back there when what was important, you're clinging to being right instead of to what's important. And you're forgetting that your vortex knows what's really important, because you've been throwing all of this stuff into your vortex, not throwing it, putting it there delicately and precisely through life experience, through the honing of life experience. You've created a reality which is where you're going, and you can't go forward and backward at the same time, and your inner being is never looking back. And when you do, you're almost always justifying it by, I need to be right. Jerry was right. Jerry was always right. Jerry was right, and Jerry and I agreed, and we were right. And you were wrong to do something different than what we agreed upon. And we're saying to Esther, you got to let what was go and move toward what is more pertinent. But it's not an easy thing to do. So here's the thing. What is so vivid for all of you, that because you can see it and hear it and smell it and taste it and touch it. So most humans are just sorting what is into piles and calling it right and wrong and arguing with each other, and worse, about it, instead of moving toward what collectively you have discovered would be better for all of you. Life is so much fun.
So we can minimize that amount of angst. We can minimize that, correct? That not knowing and not listening to the inner being, we don't have to be as bumpy of a ride. It's better.
It helps by having general conversations about laws. What happened just now in this conversation, since none of you were attached to that tree, although you felt some sympathy for Esther, none of you were attached to that tree, and you're not attached to Jerry's wishes the way Esther is attached to Jerry's wishes either. And so it would be easier for you to see the improvement than it would for Esther, because Esther's not looking for improvement, she's looking for rightness. Esther's clinging to the past in some ways. It's a little bit like looking toward what Jerry used to think instead of looking toward what Jerry is thinking. And so the important conversation here is, am I allowing my life to help me expand into more? Or am I clinging to the past in order to justify what is? That's a big question. And if you're clinging to the past to justify what is, then you're no longer creating, you're no longer moving forward, and you're pretty miserable because your inner being is calling you, and you're not listening to the call. Yeah. You're listening. To speak specifically and directly to what you're getting at here. When you're living life in a deliberate way, as you are, and lots of intentions are flowing, and your inner being is embracing them and calling you, then any habits of thought that don't go along with that stick out like sore thumbs. That's sometimes why you justify not taking on a new project or not letting yourself hear the music and go there, because it feels like overwhelmment, because you're putting too much credence in the old way of creating, which is action, and not enough in the new way of creating, which is just putting it on the universe's side of the placemat and then following your inspiration.
Well, not only that, but it's okay, these other things haven't manifested, and I've got this new thing I want to do. I want to do it all. But then there's that belief system. We're going to let that go right now, and I want to say...
Can you hold that? We want to hear that, but let us stick this in. I want to do them all. Can you say in a softer way, I want to do them all in the perfect rhythm of my own life? I don't need to do them all this red hot minute. I want to prioritize. It's like the fruit trees are out there. They're all brimming with fruit, and some of it's ready to eat and some of it isn't. And you never say, I want to eat it all. You say, I want to eat what's ripe. I want to eat what's ready to eat. Even though it feels to you, and you might even argue with us, maybe not, that all of these things are equally ripe. It isn't true. They're not all equally ripe. You could soften that by saying, I am doing them all in perfect timing, and I'm following the flow of inspiration. And in doing so, then by the time I'm really ready to do that, other things will be in place that make it easy for me to do that. This is another human trait, that those previous beliefs are the reason for the trait, and they are not serving you. And that is that old notion that I'm here to prove worthiness, which we talked about already, and it is certainly not the case, because your inner being knows your value, your worthiness, your blessedness. But I need to do it myself. I need to struggle and sacrifice just a little bit, because you're still remembering the old version of the tree. There were beliefs that you picked up along your physical trail that don't apply now. They were never accurate. There was never a God who was asking for your sacrifice.
Yeah, and no reward system either with that either. I get that.
Oh, there's a reward system. We call it a satisfaction in the moment system. We call it a blending and allowing yourself to be the exalted, powerful, clear-minded, exhilarated, powerful, creative being that you are system. And so we interrupted you in the middle of something. Can you get back to it? That time we really weren't trying to head you off.
I'm happy. This conversation is
really a wonderful conversation. We're happy to.
Everything you want is coming. Relax and let the universe pick the timing and the way. You just need to trust that what you want is coming, and how fast it comes.